Hello everyone. All right, let me get the link shared out here. And we'll take a look at Bitcoin and some alts. I am currently in an underwater long. Hey everyone. All right, let's take a look at Bitcoin first. We have just wicked through these lows. This is the 4-hour chart. I'm in an underwater long from this sweep of this low. And my validation was down here, but willing to hold through a wick and a quick reclaim of this level. And here on the 5-minute chart, we just ran the liquidity here. We can take a quick look at order flow. It doesn't really make sense to bail on the long here if price is just instantly reclaiming the level. I mean, this is kind of the place, kind of last line of defense for a bounce here. And I still like the idea of targeting up into the POC and taking this weekly candle high up above for bearish scenarios of continuation. But we might not get that. And I think it's really, I mean, this is obviously critical support. We've been bouncing from here many times over the last several months. But if we start losing this, I mean, these lows are almost inevitably coming. There's almost no structure here. It doesn't have to come in one candle, but it's hard to imagine that we're not heading this direction. Alternatively, seeing something like this would be quite nice too for continuation. So, still at the range lows. Order flow's been very, very punishing on longs and not so punishing for sellers. Take a quick look at that here. You know, during our whole uptrend was really built by these really high volume liquidation candles, like 35 million delta here, quite high. Been really nice to trade around over the last year, I would say. And that goes for short setups as well with positive delta. But these high delta selling candles really have not been holding as significant lows. And we even saw some really aggressive selling coming in here at the highs, 20 million negative delta. I mean, those have been strong continuation signals. We haven't been getting that on the linear as much. But for many of our uptrends over the last forever. But anyways, what we have seen is just any aggressive longs coming in, instantly getting punished. So we can see after we made this initial wick to the downside, 35 million negative delta, we rallied here. We had some really aggressive longs come in, 11.8 million, 6.7 million. I'd say that's maybe a little bit more unusually aggressive. Punished very quickly. And then here, as we started breaking down, we saw a super aggressive long come in, 9 million delta, right at the lows. And that was instantly punished as well for a move to the downside. So we do have some really high negative delta wicks below still, 17 million delta. And we had some here, 11 million, 4.2 million. This speaking to some of these longs getting stopped out. And you know, I would just like to lean towards somebody's obviously taking the other sides of these trades, right? This is just the market selling versus limit orders. A move to the upside here. If we can start holding up some of these range low structures and we just have a very choppy range low retest here. But yeah, I'd be pretty cautious if we lose this. But yeah, I think we're still at the lows of the range. I think it makes sense to be having longs from here, and I'll probably continue to long any strength out of here. And I'll continue to rely on these seemingly unreliable high delta selling events to add to longs. But yeah, I don't think there's too much to say in terms of Bitcoin here, other than on the daily time frame, we've taken this daily low that we formed on Friday, retesting the range lows. If this range breaks down, well, some big targets down, even down to the 44, 43K region. So, but definitely looking towards this 50K low as a major target. Until the range breaks down on the high time frames, we're just ranging. Oh my God, I'm on the wrong screen. There we go. Here we are on the daily time frame. We've taken this low. We're at the range lows. And sorry, yeah, I was just saying that. I mean, if we lose this, obviously there's a possibility we just form a bigger range off these lows. But at some point, it's hard to imagine these lows aren't coming. And it's always been part of my higher time frame thesis as the most likely case that we do take these lows at some point. Even back here, but was looking for, as the primary thesis, even from down lower, just a move up through these highs. But this range has persisted. We haven't taken these highs. There was two really clean ideas of a move up into this 75K region. Then come and tag this low. So we might not get that. But yeah, we're just sitting at the range lows. And definitely prepared for the reality that I'm going to be stopped on a long here. Add one to the list. But yeah, major targets up here. I'd be pretty interested in shorting this level. And I guess I was saying that I would also be looking to add into any kind of uptrends that form here. Looks like we might be in for a further range, though, into the weekend. It's a pretty well-established range at this point on the local time frame. So even if we rally here, no reason to think that we're not going to continue to get some meaningful reactions off these range levels, keeping price contained for a little while. But I guess we'll find out. Doge is taking some major lows here in a bit of a descending channel. This is on the 4-hour chart. Tapping its GP from this pivot low or this pivot low. It's a bit of a region. You just see a little descending structure here. We just tap the lows of it. Ultimately, we are at some high time frame levels. I've been looking for an opportunity to add to swing trades on Doge with tighter invalidation. And I think this is, because I've longs from lower with quite wide stop losses and smaller sides. I think this is about as good as it's going to get for local structure for swing ads, where you have established lows, a retracement to the GP of the move, just some nice parallel structure. Seems like an okay try. I noticed XRP has been quite strong through all of this. This is the 4-hour chart on XRP. I also have a swing long on XRP with quite a wide stop because there's a really bullish idea on XRP that I'm trading towards. It's not my idea, it's someone else's, but I do like it. But anyways, yeah, I was looking for a chance to add to this position as well, but has been quite strong. Got this kind of grinding price action forming. Haven't taken any major pivots in a while, or local pivots. It's been very, very wicky, like all throughout here. XRP's been very volatile, just big wicks to the downside all throughout this. Kind of a little challenging to trade, which is why I do have this really wide position. But yeah, I wouldn't mind looking for something to trade to tighten up this XRP position a bit. I'm just looking here because I might kind of reassess this idea of just coming and filling this wick. I'll probably look at it later in the week, see what happens here. The targets for this idea come in at $5, $6, $7, so definitely would like to look for opportunities to add. Very, very different structure on XRP than most other alts. FTM is also right around its local GP. Retesting some horizontal lows. Just barely front run them. Waves is also very close to its local GP. Slightly front run. Kind of interested to see what happens to Tesla here over the next several days. Do you have some? I have a long setup from down lower here. Pretty happy with how this trade's turned out. But interested in a short setup here, and this is a pretty aggressive target, but definitely willing to take that short. Maybe look for a TP1. Carry the rest and swing long down at $65. Order flow doesn't look too bad on this rally though for Bitcoin so far locally. You know, we had this quite large long position open up 9.5 million. As we retested these local lows. Punished very quickly. 17 million delta. Obviously, we can just add all these other liquidation candles to the mix here. So lots of selling into this level. And on this rally, not a lot of aggressive buying. But price is moving up quite easily. So not a lot of resistance. We're seeing price kind of grind higher. No aggressive buying, but no big limit selling here. So I'd say this is a little bit more ideal for what you'd want to see out of the lows, and not start seeing these big, you know, 12 million, $7 million positions come in, 9 million right off after the initial reaction and get instantly absorbed. But this kind of grinding, sort of everybody sideline, nobody wants to play with Bitcoin anymore. And that's a little more ideal for some continuation ideas, stronger moves from here. I'm in someone saying XRP is going to pump. Because of some fundamental stuff. If something happens, what's your TP on XRP? I have no hard TP. I mean, the essential idea I'm trading around here is it's an idea that X-Force Global has been talking about for a long time. It's this massive multi-year triangle that we've been in, and looking for quite a large move to the upside into the $8 region, $5 region. But I would just say for this main position, the TP is at probably around all-time highs. And is that because I think it's necessarily the most likely thing that we go to all-time highs? It doesn't quite work like that. It's just the structure of the idea. The whole point of trading this triangle, the only reason to even put the risk on at the lows of the triangle here is the whole idea is that it's an Elliott wave idea, that we see our wave 5 come out of this. So after a big, long, multi-year triangle. And, you know, we're better off to spit some risk at it than right where the idea culminates at the lows, for whether it's the triangle is going to hold or it's going to break. And so that's why, in my view, it makes sense to put on a little bit of risk and maybe look for some opportunities to add a little bit more size to a position like that. But, you know, you don't, in my view, you don't trade this type of multi-year thesis and then like take profits on the 15-minute chart anywhere locally here. So be sitting in that one for a while, I imagine. But looking for opportunities to add. We want to keep an eye on DOGE here as we retest the GP. Fill this wick again. Definitely want to see price reclaiming these horizontal levels. Yeah, we can look at EXO really quick. Did you have any questions about? So someone just asked, can we have another look at EXO? We can look at linear as well. More or less the same story. You could say relatively heavier selling here. 244 Bitcoin, 506, 363, and 2,000 in this 5-minute candle at the lows. And a little bit of a short squeeze candle out of the initial rally. Nothing too aggressive coming in here. Certainly some longs coming in. Some shorts getting stopped out. The overall context here is, well, if we bounce, we do have a bullish divergence across the range. But we've seen these so many times in this downtrend that it's not that it's irrelevant, but it's just, you know, I'm sure people get tired of hearing the term bullish divergence at some point. But we have them on the BTC USD and BCT USDT pairing. Someone's asking, yeah, I check IBIT order flow, the BlackRock order flow. I mean, I think I check it pretty much. I look at it every live stream that I do and still update it, talk about it most of the time. But yeah, I mean, nothing's changed too much here on the higher time frames. Just lots of steady selling. Its kind of character took just has a massive change since this section of the chart. Still pretty relatively new data, but it was essentially a cheat code in this area of the chart. And that funds kind of dried up a little bit. But I mean, this some of the principles still apply. Super heavy selling here, and you could just call this a continuous bullish divergence, or at least signs of very aggressive selling and lots of relatively strong limit buying pressure. Although the chart, it'd be hard to tell that's the case. Are we still looking at INJ $14? Well, I'm still hold on. I'm still planning on trading that level if I get it. These are some of these really deep targets for some alts. INJ is target down around $14. So, I mean, it's not necessarily to say that like this has been a target for 7 or 8 months now from these highs. And so, I mean, it's not even necessarily to say that I'm certain that it's going to come, but it looks like a pretty major idea on the chart, in my view. So on the logarithmic chart, kind of the structure here is a little bit more clear. And the idea of coming in and retesting this impulse low look quite good up here. And so, yeah, if I get this sweep down to this log scale GP, I'm definitely going to be looking for swing longs from that level. And I have alerts set down there, always keeping an eye out. I like to put alerts like right at these local lows, even though one could certainly argue that it's a little preemptive. If we break this down, this last 25% move, 20% move could come in the matter of hours or minutes even. So I even want to be aware of the INJ chart when this is getting tested. And we've seen that many times, right? Where the last leg of a move, 20% or so, it just comes in one big wick and it recovers instantly. Like you either are going to trade it or you're going to miss it. And that could all happen in a matter of an hour. So I like to set alerts where there's potential for that big kind of quick liquidity move to the downside. Or liquidity cascade. What was my bearish scenario if we break the range lows? Let me go to the bearish scenario. This was some this is some very speculative structure. Just looking at what potential structures we have here. In fact, this chart's pretty messy, but I guess it gets the point across here. Let me turn off everything except for this folder. So I'll just explain what I'm doing here. Is I'm just looking at what parallel structures and ascending structures that exist on the chart, and just looking at the dates with which those interact with major horizontal levels, just to be aware of, right? So for example, it'd be nice to know that we're intersecting with this ascending structure at the POC at 67K on July 17th if we get it. But the major target for the bearish idea, the harmonic idea, and we don't have to retest these highs for that harmonic, is to come down into this 42K region. I'd say there's There's a pretty clean looking harmonic with that target with this 886 rejection here. So I would say that idea has been upgraded pretty heavily for me. And I would trade towards it with a trade like this if I got the chance. You know, I would say as far as order flow goes, basically it's almost hard to put any stock. I still do because, you know, I don't derive the relevance of data based on the last week of data. You know, you're looking at what happens if you use a certain type of data the same way over the course of years, not days. But that said, you know, all these really aggressive selling wicks have been present on pretty much every pairings chart and haven't been very reliable as major lows in the last several weeks like they usually have been. I think one thing I would note is that the BTC USDT pairing has actually been quite clean rather than the BTC USD linear for showing some bearish order flow, at least locally at the highs, whereas the BTC USD hasn't. So, you know, I'll just show some examples. This is the BTC USD. This was at our local highs. We actually had bullish divergences, some really heavy selling into some of these local retracements on the BTC USD, and even into this whole downtrend. Nothing particularly bearish, other than to say that essentially if any longs opened, they were just instantly punished. So, you know, if you did have some longs opening aggressively at some of these highs, there was certainly some bearish triggers. But there actually has been bearish divergences forming. And I did point these out in the Discord. You know, here, equal highs. This is a bearish divergence forming on BTC USDT. Well, you have a bullish divergence on BTC USD. So I'd say for bearish, some bearish order flow signs, and back here as well, more consistently, we saw bearish divergences forming before these moves down. Has been, I'd say, more reliable for bearish order flow divergences and signals, whereas the BTC USD hasn't. Even here, like this is like hella bearish. So you have this range here, and we break down, and we have this initial rally, and we just have like so many longs opening here, giving us a big bearish divergence before price grinds back lower. And we did see bearish divergences, but not too much lower on Bitcoin or BTC USD. So yeah, no, I wouldn't take it that way. So someone says, so in the bear case, the total bottom will be on August 13th. So for the correction to finish, or August 31st, I think he meant to say. No, I mean, I'm not making the claim that that's when the total bottom will be in, but if this structure persists, this is a really important date. You know, this would be like Like, if, say you just imagine if what would happen if price went down to $42,000, but it did it in some sort of trending parallel structure. Well, you could sort of imagine what the timing of something like that might look like. So instead of maybe thinking that, here's a good example. Okay, we're going to go to Tesla really quickly. Well, like this ascending trend line. So I had this idea and shared this idea 7 months before this level, looking for this move into this trend line, taking these lows. There's a bit of a window here for when that level becomes relevant. But if we start diving into the Tesla chart, we're going to find all these parallel structures that formed. And, you know, this one was, I did share this at all-time highs, by the way, on Tesla back in 2021, which is we have this like really aggressive parallel really aggressive move up into the top of this parallel structure. And so if you wanted to imagine what some of the timing might look like to come into key retracement levels in confluence with parallel structures, or sorry, when we might come into some of these key horizontal retracements, and what the time frame of those trades might look like. Well, if you have some kind of parallel structure, that can give you an idea, right? So if we go through here, there's parallel structures on all of these time frames. Let me just clean up this entire chart so we can actually see what we're looking at here. So here we have this descending parallel structure. And if you had drawn this out beforehand, like, hey, what might it look like if we have a descending parallel structure, maybe even into this low, it kind of gives you a sense of what the timing of a move like that might look like. Because part of it is you can just kind of think, well, you know, maybe you have some ideas. Maybe you're in a trade or you're looking for a trade down at 42K. But every time this happens, you're like, oh, shit, that's not coming. But maybe that move ends up looking more drawn out, right? Maybe not. But anyways. So being aware of these parallel structures, they are everywhere. This is a perfectly clean parallel structure on Tesla. This is the daily chart. Obviously, this was already showed it. I think this actually was a parallel structure as well. There's a lot of smaller ones. But anyways, I like to be aware of the potential of a parallel structure forming. For example, this was not a parallel structure on Tesla here, but I had it on my chart. And I was aware when we were impulsing into the middle of nowhere at all-time highs that we were tapping that parallel structure. So I have a video on parallel structures on my YouTube. I'm quite certain it's public, but I'm not 100% positive. Do I see the current 786 as strength or a weakness to be swiped? Front run of the 786. I'm not really putting too much stock on it. We have a major blow that holding or losing looks pretty relevant. I mean, if I go here, we've slightly front run the 786. I was pretty certain we had. We actually came a lot closer to the 786 than I thought we did. I'm assuming this is what you're referring to. If not, you can let me know. But if you're asking if I think that's, I would just, I'm not putting a lot of relevance on it, because even if this happens, I mean, okay, there's still obviously just going to be a big question mark here when we retest this wick. I mean, you got to just be pretty wary of a breakdown. But while price is holding above here, that's the most relevant thing. Yeah, we come test this wick, tap the 786. I don't know. The main idea, just holding this pivot in either case, would be the more relevant idea, I think. Someone asked, does technical analysis in these drawings really work? For me, at first glance, it looks like believing in horoscopes. Do people really make money like this? Yeah, you know, technical analysis is quite widely used even at the highest levels of money management and trading. Some of the greatest money managers alive use technical analysis. And there's times where, I mean, I would say that it kind of gets a bad rap because of how people present technical analysis. There's times where it can almost look like magic in a way. But I would say the thing about technical analysis is it's really about how you're structuring your trade, like what the idea of your trade is. Where are you putting on the risk? Where are you removing the risk? Where are your targets? And it's less about predicting what price will do. So, but would I say that there's consistencies that can be drawn from technical analysis that are, in some sense, you would say surprisingly accurate? Yeah, definitely. I mean, maybe I'll do this on another live stream, but just I mean, I could do it now. I'll find the same ideas. Just name a chart, name a ticker, just a random ticker. It doesn't even have to be crypto. Just could be, in fact, you know, go to something. We go to some commodity or something 30 years ago, and we're going to find all the same ideas over and over and over again on the chart. So it could be also Forex, doesn't really matter. We're going to find all of these same structures and ideas on every chart. I don't even have to know what the chart is, and I know that they'll be there, unless it's like an altcoin that launched yesterday. Someone says Nvidia, someone says Tesla. Well, we just kind of did Tesla. All right, let's do, we'll do Nvidia. All right. I mean, I already know that there's some of this stuff on the Nvidia chart. Some of this is before the split. Let's get rid of, this is actually Tesla's chart overlaid on the Nvidia chart. Let's go here, session, extended trading hours. So this already was a parallel structure, just moving up into the highs, like on the 4-hour chart. We actually had multiple parallel structures to the highs. And keep in mind that this is something you could call a predictive structure, which is you have your trend and your pivot high before the high comes in, sort of like that Tesla idea. So it's not the same time frame, but you know how I showed that example of you have this drawn out and then Tesla impulses up into the all-time high into a perfect parallel structure and then rejects? That same premise is here, right, on Nvidia. I'm going to get rid of this fractal on the Nvidia chart. Obviously been in a strong uptrend. See where this retracement came in. You know, a big idea that I'm always looking at is you take the last major pivot low into the pivot high and looking for retracements and strong support. Taking a previous low is really a nice confluence because a lot of times there's stops there and people get quite bearish into the GP. So I'm going to be surprised that we find this exact idea as major pivot lows within the uptrend. In fact, this might be one here. It is indeed not. Big ideas here. Coming and taking these lows would be quite wild. But anyways, if we go back into the history of the chart here, it's quite a clean range here. So technical analysis would be something like this to answer your question. Be something like identifying this as a range and saying, okay, well, here's a range and I'd be interested in longing a failed breakdown, sweep of this range low for continuation. So there's a little bit of patience required here in this instance. Sort of also like the Tesla long that I took, which was coming and taking this low. And part of my idea sort of has the look of a range a little bit, depending on what lines you draw on your chart. And so the parallel here would be, okay, well, if we could come take some of these lows, I'd be interested in a long setup. You could apply the same thing to short setups. In this case, you know, breaking down, flipping the range to resistance. But your invalidation, the structure of your trade would be, well, if we're breaking up out of this range, well, I don't want to be in the short anymore. Just has the look. I mean, it's just funny because I can go back here to 2022, back when the equivalent of $30 on Nvidia, and I just know, like, I have the image of this price action in my head from a gazillion other charts. In fact, it's in some ways not so different than our current Bitcoin chart. But the rejection comes in right at the 618 again, high to low. So we have a big impulse, high. We put in a low, impulse up into the 618. We come and take some lows here. Let's go to a little bit higher time frame of a chart, and let's just kind of build out some of the relevant structures here. I'd be a little bit surprised if on this time frame this was a parallel structure, because this move is very impulsive for the time frame of the move. And so the claim here for the case of technical analysis, just be kind of interesting to see where this aligns. Isn't that every high comes into a parallel structure, every low comes into the GP. But what you're going to find is that these are very consistent ideas. And on some of these big moves from $2 to $34, you probably want to start playing with the logarithmic chart as well. I'd say this is a pretty significant low. Just want to see if this is the 786. I'm not going to blow I'm not going to blow smoke here either in terms of, so like I would not have, probably traded this GP. It would have been kind of tough to, with all these lows here. This also does have, other than the fact that it didn't bounce from the GP, I mean, this has the look of so many charts as well, this retracement. But coming and tagging this, the origin of this impulse, go to the weekly chart, but this is going to look super clean. You know, think about what the idea here is on, for me on INJ. I mean, how different? And I have that idea. Before up here, right? Before we saw this impulse. But the idea of coming in and retesting the origin of this impulse looks quite clean, taking all these lows. I mean, this just such a beautiful setup on this retracement on Nvidia. So clean. Anyone who's a member in the LITF would know that on higher time frames, these are the kinds of ideas I'm always looking to trade. But yeah, so this is kind of like drawing a horizontal line here and saying, hey, I would trade a sweep and a reclaim of this level is technical analysis. It's as simple as that. This is like blocky range we broke out of. Obviously this has, you know, I mean, I already know what this has similarities to on the Bitcoin chart. And go to it now. But so we have this strong move, choppy range, take the range lows, impulse break up out of the range. I mean, structurally, this, you know, this comes to mind, right? It's on a different time frame, but structurally very similar. This was quite an easy range to identify over the 6 or 7 days, and I did short the highs of the range, and I did long the lows of the range. And back when bullish divergences meant something, we had really big bullish divergences forming here in Orderflow, so it made quite a lot of sense to hold along for a breakout there. But anyways, so these are just common structures that are gonna present themselves on all charts, on all time frames, and the idea of order flow is not, or sorry, the idea of technical analysis is not to say that, you know, if you're in this long at this range low, just say targeting the range high, and, you know, let's not even put like any order flow ideas for holding higher. Your whole idea here could be, well, I'm going to trade this as a range. And that, in fact, was my idea in here. And I think early on, there was on the 15-minute chart, was some wicks here to take. And I had a short from here. I took a long here. Believe I just took this short, took this long, and I don't think I traded it again. I think, was this the weekend? Yeah. Sorry, this was a while ago. Yeah, so this was Friday, Saturday. But I held this through the weekend. We had this big impulse on Monday. Is back in February. But anyways, the whole idea would be that I want to be long if we're holding this range. This is the technical idea. We've wicked this low. We've stopped at all these longs. I want to be long from here, and I want to get out of this trade if we break down. And so you've structured your trade around a technical idea. And if we can reclaim this, maybe I'd get back in. But if we're going to break this down, I just want to be out. And if I'm trading this as a range, you know, the risk-reward ratio is 7-1 on that trade. And so there's nothing about it that's really horoscopy, right? Because you're not predicting it's an if this then that. You're not predicting this range is going to hold. I'm long here because this range won't break down, and we're going to go to the top, and we're going to go to the moon. You're saying I'm long because this is a range, and if we're holding this, I'll stay long, and if we break it down, I'll cut my long. So it's conditional, right? You're not taking a trade because you think you know the range low will hold or you think you know the range high will hold. You're taking it because that's the structure that you have to trade around. And, you know, when levels break, like, that's the other thing. Like, a good stop loss would be, the good idea of a stop loss would be that when a level breaks and hits your stop loss, you're out of that trade. The bad part, it's not bad to take a stop loss because you can't predict what's going to happen. But a good stop loss is that, hey, if this level goes, there's a void here, and I'm expecting price just to carry on against that initial position. That's why I want to be out of it. If this level's gone, I want to be out of that trade, and that would be the whole idea, right? And you'll see those kind of ideas on, I mean, lots of charts. Like, you got to be quite wary when certain levels break, because price can move through the region of the chart below it or above it quite quickly, and that's usually incorporated into your invalidation. You know, so the question is, in this situation, if the range breaks down, how many tries is it sensible to try if it goes for a fake reclaim? Well, you just have to ask yourself, I mean, like, how many tries is it sensible to try to long the range lows? And it depends how you define the range. I mean, just, you could try it every time if you have a technical trigger, right? I mean, so what's the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is that you have a range. This is more of just a pivot low taken. The worst case scenario is that you have a range. Although, I mean, this doesn't happen so often in ranges, but you have a range, you get a trigger, it breaks down, and if the problem is probably if you start using these local pivots, that can be a little dangerous. But then, okay, it reclaims, you enter again, it breaks down, okay, it reclaims the range, but it breaks down again, and then it reclaims the range, and then it breaks down again. It's like, at some point, you're just not trading that, right? Like, how many you're not going to take 15 stop losses like this unless you're trading like the 1 second candle around this line, maybe. Because at some point you just have completely new structure at play. So I would say, how many times is it reasonable to trade it? I mean, if you're trading as a range every time, it's reasonable. Doesn't mean you have to trade it, but why wouldn't you trade it? Like, what's the thesis of, you know, you're in a range, prices wick through the lows, and it's reclaiming or rejecting. You know, obviously this was a range before it was an uptrend. Ethereum had much cleaner ranges at play, and so many of its lows were just so clean, like just little wicks through the lows. But yeah, I just don't know if it would ever make sense, because at some point you're just saying, well, you know what, I just think that this like, I'm just thinking of the worst case scenario, which is something like that, right? Where price is just barely ticking new highs and you're putting your stop right above the high, which I usually trade my positions a little wider, so I would survive a couple of these. But yeah. But if price is accepting back into the range, you don't have to take the trade. But I'd say it's reasonable to do so. I mean, if we ever get to the top of this range and we reject, I'm going to be shorting that, right? And I might get stopped out. You know, horizontal highs and lows, this is what I want to say. Horizontal highs and lows are so powerful. Like, they're just so powerful. And sometimes you don't get every you don't get deep retracements into highs and lows, but these local highs and lows are just such strong levels. Like, take this wick straight up back to the top of the range, you know, forming a range here, some lower highs, but obviously you could have a range within a range, you know, form a high, form a low, take that low, wick through that low, straight up to the local high, take that straight down to the lows, straight up back to the highs, not a full rotation down to the lows of the range in this case, take the highs of the range. I mean, take this low of the range into the middle of the range in this case. I don't have the middle line turned on. And you're going to see this on so many time frames over and over and over again. And then you have this kind of scenario, right, where we've chopped around. But at some point, like, you almost can't call this the range per se, because this choppy price action is almost more prolonged than the range itself. But it's also quite common for, you know, like mini ranges to form at major lows and highs, right? So you have this, you wick the low before the big impulse. And it's quite often that even if you don't rotate to the lows of the range, when you have these highs, wick through the high, get a major retracement, wick through the high, get a major retracement. And even though we never actually took these lows again, probably can consistently get out of positions like that with a TP1, and obviously take the high again. But yeah, wicking these horizontal levels to the upside and the downside, just super powerful ideas. This was a slight wick, this was a slight front run, and you know, I remember a lot of these, but this was a major horizontal here, taking this. But this is, I mean, we had some pretty, the problem is as well, like once you have a really strong move and you start trading into a potential uptrend, right? Like this, it worked out super well. There was a really aggressive move to the downside, to the upside, and then just super choppy, grindy price action into all-time highs. All of these just so super, I mean, I'd say pretty relatively clean triggers. Lots of chances to add to long positions. This as well, right? Like I was taking longs in here without deep retracements into reclaims. I mean, Orderflow was bullish, but it also was in some of these retracements. So there's that to be said. But anyways, doesn't mean every trade has to be based off of that. Some trades can be based off of like grinding trending structure. And for example, like I took this long on I had a long from lower, but I added into just a good example because it's about as extreme as it gets in terms of continuation. You guys probably remember this whole setup in here, longing up into this and fucking up that trade, TPing way too early. But anyways, this was right here. The target was up into these highs for this whole move, and there was an Elliott wave idea at the time that's not, I would say, valid at the moment. But I ended up taking this long because of the super bullish divergences forming. Initially, I was looking for these local lows to get taken, and I was going to trade that impulse, but everything's just getting absorbed here. And so I actually just longed. Ended up with a 7R add up into this level. So, or maybe it was a 6R add. But anyway, so you can long without every trade being taking the range highs and lows. But what ends up being pretty punishing is when you end up in a range and you're doing that. And I've certainly ran into some of that. I mean, I'll just be honest. I had nice entries on longs in this, like catching the lows, and you have the little bit of like, hey, things are going pretty good, price is going straight up, and some targets higher, catching some of these lows. The horizontal structures here are pretty straightforward, I would say. But at the time. But that can be, even if you're in you're looking at this as a range and all these horizontal lows, it can be quite punishing to trade choppy or ranging price action as trending price action. Because even if you get the entry, you don't get the TPs, right? So let's just say, for example, that, price starts rallying here and we have some nice clean triggers and signs of bullish absorption in order flow. I would be looking to add to long positions even on the way up, targeting towards this POC if I get clean triggers that seem actionable. But that can be really punishing if this just turns into a range, because not only, maybe I take out some of the risk in some of these positions, like stops to break even or what have you, but you're really round tripping a lot of unrealized profits when you're trading towards a trending move out of in ranging price action. And I would make the argument that there's something to be said about treating every trade for a TP1 as a range, and then letting the rest of the trade towards a trend. Obviously, it's really nice when you have and in some of these cases I did, where you have trending positions, adding into positions towards major targets, but it can be punishing when it doesn't work out too. It's a give and take. All right, let's just take a quick look at the OF, the order flow. New York's in an hour. Someone's asking what my view is on Fed. Take a quick look at the order flow, and then I can take a look at Fed. Nothing too crazy happening here on BTC USD. Coming in to retest some local lows as a 5-minute chart. Obviously, we've had these big liquidation candles already. This is technically the start of a little bullish divergence, but you imagine it's maybe not going to stay technically valid. It may, because these lows look like a likely target, but just kind of aggressive selling, not too much aggressive buying up here. Little early signs of absorption forming here. Nothing crazy on either side of the order flow spectrum. All right, my views on FET. This isn't a target, by the way. Looking at, we're on the log scale chart here. I'm going to have to all right, let's get rid of a little bit of this. These are some older folders here. Some is log, some is not. So on log scale, on FET, we rejected from this logarithmic parallel structure. Wasn't perfectly clean. There's some there's some kind of nice ideas with this predictive fib ideas of price coming pulled from this low to this high. Price coming up to this level also makes this the 618. It's sort of like a fib extension. And so I did have ideas for the all-time high or major high coming in around here, fed on the time. I got a lot of flack for suggesting something like that could be the case. But I would say this parallel structure, I'm just going to wash it probably at this point because I'm not really likely to do anything here. And obviously I know it's merging with another coin, so the chart's going to completely change. But at the time, my view on FET was looking for a move down into this 42-cent region. And again, that was my idea from higher. So we are coming down towards what was the GP at the time, but it's now moved. And this is just local. So filling this wick would tap a GP and maybe be a nice idea for a local bounce, but ultimately moving down towards these pivot lows. You know, it's similar to the Nvidia retracement or the INJ retracement. You have this kind of basing, consolidating price action. You put in an impulse low, you impulse, and you just retest that impulse low. And that would be my target for FET. But I know the chart's going to completely change because it's pairing or merging with some other project. Yeah, so some kind of economic data coming out. So you could maybe expect some volatility. I still just trade technical levels, but certainly can look for volatility around those kind of events. I mean, this kind of looks a little nasty structurally, just this kind of like continued grinding, but with this big wick to the downside. See if anything interesting happens in order flow here. Give me it's a little, it's very slight. So like this is technically a little bit of bearish divergences or bearish absorption rather for me, but the volume's so low. But we had a couple, like a 600K, 1 million come into this candle and, you know, giving us a little bit of a bearish divergence forming here. It's just kind of hard to put much stock in it because it's always relative, right? It's always relative to the previous high. So it doesn't look quite as important as, say, like the 9 million in longs that came in on this candle and got instantly absorbed. Give me 3 or 4 minutes. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. But just to go back to the technical analysis, seeming like believing in horoscopes. Just go back and go back to the last 30, 40 years of different stocks, commodities, and just start studying price action and see if you see kind of similar ideas appear on the chart over and over again. Similar structural ideas. Kind of interested to keep an eye on Say here as well, because there's a pretty big void here. Price could just run into this low very quickly. If Bitcoin breaks down here, then expecting a lot of alts to get obliterated. Pretty deep targets, high time frame targets for FTM. I mean, some of these alts look quite nasty, to be fair. Sorry, just on the wrong chart again. INJ does look quite nasty. Say looks quite nasty. Nothing here. If it can't reclaim this quickly. Thoughts on OP? Well, I do have the chart pulled up here. Because somebody did ask for it on a live stream request, and I thought it looked okay on the log chart here. Coming and taking these lows. This was back here. Come and maybe sweep this wick. It's kind of a similar idea to this dot idea. It's almost the same chart, just the logarithmic GP come and take the wick. Got quite a nice reaction off of it. But yeah, I mean, if we lose this, could get nasty right now, just kind of bouncing around this kind of horizontal level support right at the log GP. 40 wick through it once. So my thoughts are, I mean, obviously, to some degree, it's going to depend on what happens to Bitcoin. I mean, the whole market moves together, right? If Bitcoin breaks down in a significant way, then alts are probably going to follow. But holding up this level doesn't look so bad. Pretty grindy downtrend and a little bit of a range here on the daily chart, right at this log scale GP. A couple lows not taken yet. But if this breaks down, it's kind of hard to not just assume some of these lows are coming next. Wouldn't say this is a parallel structure, but there's a trend line here as well. New York opens in an hour. But yeah, I think I want to just mention, I think FET has been or is getting delisted on a bunch of exchanges as well. You could say that this rejection looks kind of bearish too on Sol into this trend line. I have some higher time frame ideas. I'd like to trade around $79 if we get them. Lots of big wicks here. This was quite a clean channel on FTM. We're just referring back to it, I think during the last live stream, but this was back in 2022. Some really clean intersections here. But anyways, yeah, I'm looking for actually looking for these lows on the higher time frames to get taken on FTM. The 16-cent lows. But I do kind of like the ideas of coming up and taking some of these highs, although those ideas are getting less and less clear, so to speak. We have a nice log scale channel here where we bounce from this low. But the idea would be if we could push up into these highs and shorting that down into these lows. But the channel isn't going to be a confluence for much longer, unless we go straight up over the next week. Yeah, someone's mentioning ARB. I'm going to get rid of this chart. Yeah. did mention this ARB level some time ago as price was coming down towards these lows. For a swing long, tagging this low. Nice reactions off the level. Coming back down to retest it. But if you're going to try a long anywhere on the ARB chart, and I actually did long this absolute low, like 5 minutes from the absolute low. I wasn't targeting all the way up here. At the time, you know, it's funny because this kind of happened on a bunch of alts, like having targets 50, 60, 70% away. Like on FTM, for example, like I longed into this GP retracement into the GP POC. Was the non-log GP. That was a major target from up at the highs. Was waiting for that level to get hit. But what's funny about it, we had this nice POC. It's very similar to the OP chart and the dot chart in a way. But you know, you take profits on that, and you have some what you think are deep targets, and then you know price just keeps going. That happened with quite a few of my alt positions. It's a really nice logs from the lows. You could say you TP'd too early. But yeah, as far as ARB goes, I mean, if we lose this low, then you're kind of in like this price discovery in a sense, sort of like what waves sort of just went through. But I don't think it looked too bad. We had a nice bounce off that low, about 15%, but tagging this low for long setups. We'll see. Oh. The level's only going to take so many tests and retests. Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin's coming back down to retest this pivot low. Take some of its local lows. Could easily just continue here. We're going to find out. So local retracement after a low initial reaction so far. I think FTM just hit its GP. Sort of messed up this local chart here. Taking these local lows. It's a pretty important local level for FTM. Just the horizontal structure here, we can see it's clearly important locally. Aligns with the GP. Bitcoin reacting, taking these little local lows here. Nothing really too interesting happening at Orderflow locally. Volume's all very low. Structurally, you're kind of front running this retest for now. Just taking out these local 15-minute lows. I do want to check RUNE because I just got an alert. Probably just go to my alerts. Just want to take a look at this. Been interested in this setup. If we could come and tag this wick into this parallel structure, but technically the structure will be breaking down because of the timing here. We'll see. I have some alerts set here at these local lows. I don't like it. I don't like it as much had it been this low that tagged the channel. See this very clear horizontal structure. We're back down, just retesting this support. We front run this low a little bit as of now. This channel is on the log chart, by the way. Yeah, I guess I don't know if I want to sit live till the New York Open, but maybe I'd come back live, or maybe I'll sit live. I don't know. Coming down to retest the pivot low here. A little more aggressive selling the USDT pair. Some shorts opening into the retest. Nothing too crazy, but certainly a little more volume here. Open interest increasing. About 180 Bitcoin. Structurally, it'll maybe have like a little bit of a low time frame range threatening to form here. If we go to the 1 minute chart, with the retest being the sort of technical level here. If there is one at all. You know, this could start looking a lot like a range. This is the 1 minute chart. We'll see. Maybe come fill this wick. Or just nuke. I mean, yeah. It should be exciting no matter what happens today, I think. Both of these lows taken on FTM. See, now is the test to see if price punishes any of the aggressive shorters here. We know there's some aggressive shorting coming into this retest because increasing open interest. Negative delta. So far, they probably are loving that reaction. It's not a bullish divergence here. I would just say order flow is relatively neutral. Volume is very low on BTC USD. In terms of divergences, order flow is neutral. I'd say that this is, you know, some aggressive shorting here that isn't neutral. You know, they're getting put underwater and probably about to get squeezed out. And if we just zoom out on the chart, this is price just coming down. So we've, as of now, this can change obviously. And, you know, maybe some volatility or significant pivots, impulses put in New York. But as of now, price has taken this low. It's reclaiming it and it's retesting it. On a higher time frame, that's sort of what we did initially here. Price took this low, came down and retested it on the 4-hour chart here. Which is always an important idea to look out for. I'll just note quickly, you know, just looking for those retests as potential trade setups. I did have that idea marked on my chart, June 25th. But yeah, just looking for price to come down and retest that pivot low. We did get quite a nice reaction there. So I think those types of ideas, they're just very simple and very easy to have marked out on your chart. The idea of coming in and retesting the level. Sort of what's happening here on the lower time frame. Pretty kind of interested in FTM here. Be nice for a little bit more. Come and take this low. Ugh, sorry, it is late for me. Come and take this low. That'd be quite nice. Again, we'll see. Someone says you don't see Sol going to 160 anytime soon, question mark. Well, it was just at 155. I wouldn't say that. I mean, what what I would say is this. This looks like a really clean idea I'd like to trade. Right now, Sol is, depending on how you look at it, maintaining a downtrend. Until it's not, it is. You know, took some local highs here, swept them and rejected, took the liquidity above these highs. We could very certainly just hold an uptrend and carry on higher. But I mean, right now we're rejecting. But there's nothing really, I mean, actionable here for me on Sol. So it could go up, it could go down. I'm not going to necessarily take a trade to guess which way that might be. I would trade these levels down here. And obviously you can get into the lower time frames. There's all these lows to take. They align with the GP perfectly. But depending on how you want to define the price action here, I mean, maybe you put more significance on these lows as well. Call this the start of a new range. This is the center line. But anyways, yeah. It's all going to come down to what happens to Bitcoin ultimately. Here, I mean, Bitcoin's just at a critical junction, right? It's either going to, because there's two things that can happen from here. I mean, obviously we could chop around and just range around the level for 3 days, but price is either going to go up or it's going to go down. And if it goes down, well, hey, we're going into some pretty, we have some pretty precarious territory below us. If it goes up, well, hey, we have some pretty nice technical ideas of price. Could be down, retesting the range lows. I don't really have any charting on TIA. And we have the New York Open coming here. Oh, you said Tau. There's not really, I mean, I'm sure there's other charts with more price history, but there's not a lot of price history here, right? It's just hard. It's hard to chart much here. You know, it's like if a new coin releases, you have one candle. There's not really much information that can be derived from that. This isn't quite one candle, but price is just breaking down to all-time lows. So could look at trending parallel structures. All right, FTM's taking this this low here, which is kind of interesting. It's a local setup, but just be waiting for signs of strength from here. Right now it's just breaking down. Big void here. Be no reason to fire off into a long. Without some signs of strength. But if you could kind of wick these lows, start reclaiming them, doesn't look so bad. Put on a bit of risk, trade as a swing failure. It's sort of Get 20-to-1 odds on your risk. These local highs. But again, just want to see something. I want to see some kind of reclaims or what have you. Because if you're interested in trading a level, I mean, at this point you could say, well, I like the idea of like price coming, taking all these lows and then reclaiming this. But here you can just sort of say, well, I'll just see what happens. I mean, yes, we're potentially wicking through the low, but price is just going straight down. And there's no reason at this point to assume there's going to be any strength. Until there is, right? Because at the very least, you should start to see price start to reclaim some relevant structure. If not, just walk away from the idea. Already. Because again, if you can't hold this structure as some kind of range, then, well, there's not a whole lot here below to bounce off of. You tell me, does Mexc spot have more history for it? I mean, is it just okay, I'll just look really quick. Looks this buy bit. For some reason, this won't show up on my, I can't get Mexc to pull up actually. Pepe is kind of coming down into an interesting level as well. Got this big high volume area. Take this impulse low. Still a ways away. 15%. I'm going to drop this alert down on RUNE a little bit. All right, so some long starting to come in on Bitcoin. Going to test this little local downtrend. You just see, a little bit of aggressive longing coming in here now. Price is sort of in a grindy downtrend on the 2-3 minute chart and into a critical level. Gonna test some of that liquidity and resistance above. So he's kind of these little local grindy downtrends can be quite critical for continuation. Can be quite strong. By the way, for the Tau request, I did look at it there, but you know, if something's just kind of breaking down into all-time lows, nothing wrong with just waiting for some kind of move to the upside and looking for retracements after that as well. It's quite difficult to trade into all-time lows. It has been done. All right, I'll be right back. So far, this little grindy downtrend's holding. Yeah, we're going to see here pretty quickly what this wick is made out of. New York opens in 30 minutes. Could come fill this wick. Could hold the current low. Nothing too interesting happening in order flow, really. A little bit of selling, a little bit of longing. But still holding this kind of grindy downtrend. And some alts looking a lot more precarious for a quick rundown. Arguably most alts. Say looks very precarious. Like it could just teleport through this region of the chart. Be interesting to trade around there. Bitcoin just about to test its most local 5-minute 618 retracement. See what happens there. It is right here. Sort of on the edge of a potential breakdown here. Starting to see some of that aggressive selling coming in. Right into the GP, 239 Bitcoin. Mostly longs closing. 2.3 million. Here, nothing crazy, but some of the more aggressive selling we've seen in this local price action here. Not unusual to see local bounces. If we hold up this local GP, took a little wick here. Maybe run some of these highs into New York Open even, but no alts showing any signs of strength. Maybe not no alts, but none of the alts I'm looking at. This all looks pretty nasty. Yeah, this sort of looks like we're, you know, in some ways, the more bearish things look, maybe it's like the other day, every alt looked like it wanted to break out. Bitcoin looked like it wanted to break out. I was like, man, everything looks so bullish. I just in the Discord that it's probably all just about to nuke. And it did end up being the highs. Because sometimes things look so bullish, it's just bearish. This looks all pretty bearish, to be honest. So maybe that's bullish. But a lot of these alts, like, there's just no structure below locally on some of them. Higher time frame. It all looks very precarious. INJ looks very precarious for a big move to the downside. Say looks very precarious. Say Pepe looks very precarious. FET looking quite precarious. Which probably just means it's time to just long everything. That is a joke. Yeah, there's just something to be said about when everything looks so bearish or so bullish. It's just the opposite. Because it's really hard not to say that. I mean, Bitcoin doesn't look so bad, but a lot of these alts look horrendous. Well, there you go. Testing a little local downtrend again. They all got so bearish. No, they sold the bottom. Some shorts getting squeezed out here. FTM reclaiming some structure now. Not the cleanest interaction with the GP, but doesn't look so bad. Let's try to trade up back above this wick. Coming up and testing these horizontals. ideal scenario would just be strong momentum out of here. Just fake it out. More shorts starting to close on Bitcoin. Yeah, there's we might be getting that everything is so bearish it's bullish scenario. Be kind of funny if everything just impulsed here into the New York Open. I mean, that's what I like to see. Yeah, it doesn't look so bad. Bitcoin structurally doesn't look bad on the higher time frames. You just have this low take edge holding above it for now. Sure, you see some signs of strength on the lower time frames. Still, you know, in a bit of a descending trend here, but depending on how you want to draw it. So far, just mostly shorts being squeezed out. Decrease in open interest. Probably some aggressive shorts down into this downtrend. Getting trailed out. Take this alert back down to the lows. New York opens in 15 minutes. I mean, Bitcoin does not look bad for an impulse. Just alts bouncing from wherever they're at. Definitely set up that we could retrace. We could retrace this move down pretty quickly. You know, we start popping some of these highs. clear this, take all these lower highs. Party's on. FTM's looking okay as well. As long as it's holding up the reclaim. Something like this can also be traded quite wide. Just let price kind of play around here a little bit, and if you're not getting continuation, then you just cut it. Partial stop. Yeah, I don't mind the looks of this. I do want to kind of take a look at FTM, or sorry, Tesla here too at the open. Because I'm in that big swing. So depending how you look at it, it's a swing position. Price up 60% from the lows. And I am interested in flipping short up here. Pre's already broken out. So price should gap up here into the open. See if it holds it. Obviously we could just travel through this quite quickly. Welcome back. Somebody said it's been a long time since they've seen one of my streams. How's it been? Did you move to another country? I mean, depending on how long it's been since you've watched one of my streams, I've maybe moved to 8 countries. Opens in 9 minutes. Getting a little bit of strength out of Bitcoin. Gonna test some of this descending structure maybe. Price kind of grinding up towards the local highs.
RUNE is technically testing this channel. It doesn't align with any of the lows, but someone's asking how Pepe looks. I mean, on the daily chart, it looks really bad. On this 4-hour chart, it looks really bad. There's a level down here. I mean, it just looks bad, but it could obviously just bounce from anywhere. Just, what's the trade here? I'd be interested in this if we got it. But, I mean, it could just bounce here. It wouldn't be so dissimilar to it bouncing here, right? We had this wick. Price came down, filled most of the wick. Nice rally. History could repeat. Go to the 5-minute chart. There might be some relevant structures here. The reason it kind of just looks bad is there's nothing here, right? It's like it's broken down even on the 15-minute chart. All structure is just kind of floating in the middle of a wick right now. There's no real levels here. So, that's just kind of a pretty precarious place to be hanging without some structural shifts here. Bitcoin about to pop some of its local highs. We'll test some of that liquidity, see what happens. Some aggressive longs opening now. So that's going to be a real test to see if these get punished quickly. So we had some aggressive selling at the lows. Reversal, bit of a short squeeze, and now we have some aggressive longs opening. Increase open interest, about 300 Bitcoin. We see the big spike in Delta there. Nothing too crazy on the BTC USD pairing. Obviously, people interested in trading this little local sign of strength, to potentially break out of these highs. This isn't a ton of longs, by the way. This is, for example, 244 Bitcoin, 506, 363 negative delta, 2,000 negative delta Bitcoin. Now here we have 270 aggressive longs opening. So say the local structure looks kind of bullish in this uptrend. Price just kind of just grinding up into these local highs, but about to test its first local resistance. Probably the most aggressive short setup here would look something like this for like a scalp short. TP1 locally, but come up and run these highs into this retest. Looking for signs of weakness there.
All right. Well, we'll sit through the open since I'm here. I'm gonna be here anyways, and then we'll shut her down. Be kind of interesting to see what kind of aggressive longs come in through these local highs. But yeah, I mean, I'll just recap. I don't know. It doesn't look so bad. Just wicking through and holding up this local low. Anytime you're down at the lows, well, you have a lot of local resistance to get through, like reclaiming these levels and reclaiming these levels. But for the more major ideas, I'm still quite interested in seeing price come up into this to these highs around 67K, up into this point of control. I think it's still on the table. Ultimately, on the 4 hour, just still in a range, back retesting the lows of the range, unable to hold a series of higher lows for an uptrend. That's okay. Those can always come at some point. Taking this low, holding it for now. Be interesting to see if we can get a run up into this level, or just keep rejecting and breaking down. We'll have two let me just delete everything here. You know, if we could bounce from here and see a stronger move, these two wicks would look quite nice, right? But still, these local levels to contend with. You know, it turns out I think it was right here where I was saying, man, everything's just starting to look very bearish, right? Especially the alts, which probably means just to long everything. Well, apparently that's all you need. You just need to look at the charts and say, whoa, everything looks like it's about to nuke, and then just long. Or everything looks like it's about to go straight up, and then just short. Yeah, I agree. I think FTM looks quite good. I mean, it looks quite good with the reclaims here. Like you could just see this, could go either way still, but this looks like a nice sweep of the lows. It's not a bad trade up into these local highs, and if we could run up into these highs, well, obviously beautiful. I think something like that still on the table. I mean, it's not hard to imagine. Again, you have this just descending structure. If we see signs of strength, price is just gonna rip through all of this structure, likely rip through all this structure. We break out of this structure, there's no structure, take these highs, and that's where I would be interested in shorting should the day ever come. But here we are at the lows, right? We're just kind of testing some local support. Yeah, I mean, someone says, doesn't the bottom of the chart always look like dog shit? Yeah. I mean, I was saying price never looks bullish at the lows and it never looks bearish at the highs, right? I mean, it's kind of the definition of the lows and the highs. You go back to any chart, you see the point where price just made a low and then went straight up from there. It did not look like a great place to take a long at the time. There's someone who does long retracements into support. Like, you know, I mean, I was prepared to long this on FTM. I mean, it's so similar to the ARB idea, right? That we were just looking at a moment ago. I'll just pull it up because we can just flip between the two. Go to the daily chart here. But, you know, you have this big impulse just coming and retesting this pivot low. But, you know, back when FTM was down here at 16 cents, I was looking to swing long this level. Got slightly front run. But even longing here, I mean, just never looks like a good time to long. Like in hindsight, you can be like, well, yeah, obviously we're in an uptrend and, you know, it's obvious we're going to get the next leg up. But, you know, price had just retraced 45%. And when price is there, you don't really want to long it. But that doesn't mean any time price is going down, you necessarily have to long, right? But it's... You know, these, just looking at Pepe here, this is just price, you know, forming a range, coming down into the GP, another big impulse. All I'm going to point out here before I inevitably end the stream is, you know, these structures, this is on the daily chart on Pepe, just impulse, choppy range here, price comes to the GP and impulses. You will find them everywhere. GP is the 61.8% retracement of the move. It's a bit of a region here, 61.8 to 65%. But, you know, that's, let's go to the 4. That is, in fact, a similar element of that FTM. But even on these lower FTM setup, but even on these lower time frames, it is the idea this long, right? You have a choppy range into the 618, maybe see continuation. I've got to clean this shit off this chart. But it was also the idea for the major high, just in reverse. Which is, I think I need to go to the other FTM chart to log scale. Oh no, it's just in a folder here. Well, it's not so hard to draw. Which was just price coming into the log GP, right? And that was the idea for this major high on FTM at the time. So it's just kind of the similar relevant structures, just in reverse. Price impulsing back into the GP resistance. This is GP support. Just really powerful ideas. That's what we were looking at on Pepe as well, for asymmetric risk reward. Yeah, I guess the hard thing about, like, there's a reason that the heaviest selling or very heavy selling always comes at the lows, and the heaviest or very heavy buying comes at the highs. It's because charts look really bullish at the highs, and then it's the top. And charts look really bearish at the lows. And then it's the low. And that can be applied to all time frames, right? Deviate says, yeah, I was following him a couple years ago. I moved into futures and away from crypto. I still use stuff I learned from him. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, all this stuff can be applied to futures or commodities, forex, stocks. If anyone here is interested in what I am talking about, you can join the LETF Discord, the Lucky Apes Trading Floor. The link should be in the description of this. If not, it's in my Twitter. Lots of great stuff to learn. All right, well, we've sat here, we've stared at price action on the low time frames. Maybe I'll get out of this long okay. Maybe not. Either way, it's okay with me because there's nothing I can do to control that outcome other than manage my risk, accept my risk, and try to put it on as reasonably as possible. And, you know, I would like to, if we see continued signs of strength, I know there's some ideas here that need to be watched. So, I mean, I'm probably not logging anything in here on retracements, but I'd like to keep an eye out for some of these local retracements and try some tighter setups if we can see continued strength, ultimately targeting up into this 67K region. Just depends how price action forms. Still have a long ways to go. I think the context of price here, well, we had a very deep retracement. And we're flirting with some signs of strength into the New York Open off of a retest of support. Back at the major range lows, retesting. You could say we've deviated through them twice now. We're retesting them again. We took a local low. We're holding it as support. We're impulsing off of it. If we lose these, looks a little spooky. Have some alts starting to show some signs of strength. Even on FTM here, still levels to claim. Started claiming some of these horizontals. That looks okay. Still some horizontals here yet to go. And, you know, even Bitcoin is testing its local highs here. Nothing too aggressive in terms of longs coming in at the highs yet. I would say I'd probably defer towards, even on the bearish case here, just higher locally. Like, I'd be surprised if we just don't come up and at least test this. 61.276. Some of these local retracements, take some of these local highs. You know, some of that might be scalpable as a short. Nice clean reaction. Price loses this high. Just come back into the lows, get 6 to 1. Hedge out any long ideas. Maybe just look to re-long into that local low if we got the retracement. Look to cut the risk out of this after the initial move or reaction. Some of those local ideas still look okay. Probably just be aware of the intersecting trending structures as well, depending on, you know, how quickly we can move up into this high. It just looks like this. It's another downtrend continuation right at the 618. If we get in the next hour and a half. A little bit of a confluence there. So retest of these lows. Yeah, I mean, just saying that I probably, I mean, I probably lean towards some kind of bounce, but you know, coming even and retesting these lows wouldn't look so crazy either on the chart. Something like this isn't unreasonable in my view. It's just a low time frame setup and obviously could turn into a bigger continuation trade. Just cutting if all this breaks out. Obviously, we might just reject here on this retest, but nothing too aggressive as far as longs coming in here. So one could presume it's more likely we see higher. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap up this live stream. And I'll try to fire off. I'll try to fire off a few extra live streams this week. Some members' live streams, particularly, and we'll try to do one more public one as well.